Hi, I'm Phil Spencer, and welcome to the Move IQ podcast home selling series, the only podcast series dedicated to help you sell your property. This season is sponsored by Go2 Group, who have a concierge service that can help you with all you need, from choosing the right agent, mortgage advisor, solicitor, surveyor, even removals. Plus, using Go2 online auctions or their committed buyer service to sell your home can give you certainty and peace of mind. We've added a link below so you can connect with them. Enjoy the podcast and hope you find it useful.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode number 1 of season number 3.
I wonder where you were going there. I think we've already done 2 seasons.
Good Lord. The Move IQ Property Podcast is back. Who would have thought, Phil? 3 seasons here now.
Well, there's always a lot to talk about, Chris.
There is.
There's a lot to discuss. It's a really interesting time in the housing market. People are trying to make big decisions and they're not entirely sure how to go about it.
And this brings us on to what season 3 is going to be all
about selling. This whole podcast series is all about selling, and we're going to really have a bit of a dive into the different aspects of that, the decisions that people face, and the complexities of it, because it's a big one. You've got to get it right.
Now, before we get going, however, if you are new to Move IQ and what we're all about, you should head over to moveiq.co.uk for all that good stuff. Season 1 was all about buying.
Season 2 was all about renting.
Yes.
And this series that you are kindly tuning into, all about selling.
Deep diving. Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks here. Got a property. I want to sell it. Big decision, just like anything else that we've already discussed together. Where do we start? Where's the thought process here?
Well, I think the important thing to establish to start with is your motivations. Why are you selling? What are you trying to get out of it? What's going to be more important? Is it going to simply be about the most amount of money that you can get for your property, or is it about the speed that you can get, or are you mindful about who you sell it to, or how you sell it to? Are you having a baby, changing jobs, getting divorced, or bereavement, or probate? Or there's a lot of things that can motivate a sale. So I think it helps to start with just having clear in your own mind.
In your experience, what is the number one reason why people usually sell a property?
They've run out of space. I think
They want something bigger.
They want something bigger. That more stuff, or more children, or more toys, or more hobbies, or bigger garden,
more
or
pets.
more pets, more cars. Those most people, in my experience, sell when they've run out of space. Which actually, and we'll get into it as part of the discussion on selling. Of course, when you run out of space, it's very clear that you've run out of space because you're jam-packed in your house and it's all cluttered, and that is, of course, a big. Well, it's not something you want to put across.
So, I'm assuming very heavily that there are a good few different ways to go about, the beginning part of this process of selling a property. What are the 2 or 3 ways that we can kind of look at to begin with?
Well, let's talk about the sort of different methods, whether it's high street or online or private, in a little bit. But I think to start with, if somebody is considering selling, actually, before they ring up a bunch of agents, have them round and value, actually, there's an awful lot of research that they can do in their own house with the internet, and indeed the Move IQ property report. To put yourself in the driving seat. If you ask somebody who makes their living and earns their commission, is this a good time to sell? I mean, they're not going to say no. You've got to choose the right time to suit you. You've got to have a think about timescales and, as I said, what you want to get out of it. Are you going to be buying another property? Do you want to buy that property in this market or next year's market? So by all means, read everything, study everything, learn all that you can in advance of calling around a bunch of people to value your house, or actually pressing the green button and putting it on the market. You look at market dynamics. You can, on the internet, discover how long it's taken to sell a property, what's the length of time. You can establish whether the agents or people are achieving what percentage of their asking price, things like that. So it's I guess my advice here is putting yourself in the driving seat. Inform yourself as much as you can at the outset.
So, I mean, obviously, every situation is going to be very, very unique, right? Everyone, like you say, a lot of the time people are moving, they want to move, they want to sell up because of the fact that they run out of space. But even in and amongst that scenario, there's different situations, right? There's schools, there's maybe something as simple as broadband and how important that might be, right? Particularly if they've got teenagers, Phil.
Yes.
Because we all know the teenagers with their gadgets.
Yes.
Every situation is very, very unique. There's not necessarily a right and a wrong path here, but what would you suggest, other than sort of that initial research and figuring things out a little bit more, where's the next step for people? And sort of where do you feel they should focus on when it comes to selling a property in the early days of thinking about it?
I mean, most people will use a high street agent, but there are many other options available, and there are pros and cons to all of them. But I think you're absolutely right, where we read in the press about the housing market's doing this. But it's not doing that. The global, the country's market might be doing that if you look at land registry. But actually, as you mentioned, the market can fluctuate in a very small area, different price brackets or different styles of property or different towns
or even just time of the year, maybe even.
Completely.
Yeah.
Timing is a big thing to consider, because it takes a great deal longer usually than most people give it kind of credit for. And so if you want to be in by Christmas, if you haven't started by September, then it's fairly unlikely to happen.
What is the average period of time for a house now across the UK? Once it hits the market, let's say we go the high street agent, route, how long on average does it take to sell a property?
I'm gonna pluck a figure out of the air, Chris, but it's probably 3 months.
Okay.
But actually, it could easily take another 3 months before the deal's actually completed. You get into chains and complicated arrangements like that, then how long's a piece of string? It can get very lengthy. And that is something that leads to another decision that people should take if they are selling. If they're planning to buy, then they are going to be looking at getting into a chain. And that brings huge complications. So it's a very, I think, valid and important thought process, a decision, a question to ask yourself is, would I move into rented? Would I sell?
Just to sell.
Get the most amount of money, get myself out of the market, put some cash in the bank, come back to the market as a chain-free, cashed up.
Do many people do that?
Traditionally, no. But I think the market is so complicated now, or complex, and so many chains are falling through because they take time to put together. People, we're not in particularly certain times at the moment,
right?
And the longer it takes to put a deal together, and the longer it takes for the chain to complete and all the conveyancing to take place, the greater the chances of someone within that chain's personal circumstances changing, and the whole thing falls out of bed. So, arguably, I would say actually it's better in terms of the deals that you do and the opportunities that you have to put your house on the market, sell it for the most amount of money possible, take the money, go into rented, and then come back.
Right.
But you've got the costs and expenses of 2 moves, and it's quite unsettling, and you might have to be tied into a rental for a year. So there's everywhere we look in this market, Chris, there's so many variables, which is why it's an interesting debate.
And the feedback that we get from the listeners of this show are that we do bring a little bit of calm to that storm with the knowledge and the expertise that you drop on here based on your obviously very, very varied experience in the industry.
Well, I hope so, but there's no right or wrong. It is each individual in their own circumstances making decisions as best they can. But there are so many variables, many of which you can't control. My advice is always control the ones that you can, which is the house that you choose or the price that you pay for it.
Yes, of course. I mean, a lot of people will go into this with an outcome of it in mind, very much like buying a property as well. I want this kind of house, this many bedrooms, this kind of garden, etc., etc. But as you well know, I'm a fan of reverse engineering these sort of types of things as well. How much strategy comes into play when we're looking at selling a property in regards to that or that final outcome?
Well, at the end of the day, the final outcome is the sum of money and the length of time it takes to achieve that sum of money. But there is a fair amount of strategy that goes into that. And that can be the price that you pay, the target market, the type of buyer you're trying to attract, the method of selling, traditional agent, high street agent, private auction, part exchange. So that's the kind of where the strategy comes in. And I think it's worth people considering all of those options. They'll all offer different things.
So other than the high street,
Yeah.
let's look at some of the other ways to be able to sell our abode.
Well, the one that people have talked about a lot over the last few years is the online agent.
And explain that a little bit for those that maybe are not familiar with it.
Well, if you sell via traditional high street agent, you'll get a negotiator, and it's a sort of face-to-face real situation, and they will come and do viewings and handle all the discussions with the prospective purchasers. By an online agent, and there are slightly different business models and slightly different pricing structures between them, but actually it's up to you more often than not to conduct the viewings and handle the negotiation. So it's a very different price point.
Preferably, you're going to get more. You're going to get more money this way. I mean,
Well,
you're not going to have to pay as much money as I guess what I'm saying. Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Fees are much reduced, but then levels of advice and service are also much reduced. So it's each to their own. And I think my advice there is actually it's just very important for people to understand what they're getting and what they're not getting.
Do you see a lot of people taking that particular route, selling their first property, or is it usually with people who maybe have sold a property before and a little bit more adapt to how to make it happen?
You know, money's tight, and so fees are very relevant. High street fees are coming down. That's for sure.
Is that because of the competition brought in by this online stuff?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Your house tends to be your most valuable asset. So in my mindset, it kind of pays to consider that.
Totally.
And you want to absolutely be sure that you're maximising the market, and you want as many people as possible to hear about it and see it. But it's the same as any business. They have to add value. And if you're going to pay an agent 1.5%, well, you're going to be damn confident that they're going to get you more than 1.5% on top of what somebody else would have got you.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, some people in a, perhaps not now, but in a busier market, private sales became popular, and they'd stick a board up outside their house and they'd have a go. And in a booming market, maybe that would work. Well, in fact, it would work. But it's also worth considering the amount of time and effort that needs to go into that on your own part, and you've got to be there to handle viewings and negotiations. And if you haven't done it before, that's quite an important, intricate, delicate situation to find yourself in.
Are there any other ways that people sell their properties on a regular basis?
Well,
I mean, does private selling come into play? Like when you're selling it to people that you know directly and
yes,
they haven't found you in another way?
Does a little bit. And I spoke to somebody a couple of weeks ago who'd done a house swap as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was
how does that even
within the same village?
I like your house better than mine,
basically,
kind of thing, right?
Yeah, the two had been introduced, and it fitted. So it's probably a fairly rare example,
right.
But auctions, the benefit of an auction is is a guarantee. There isn't a chain. The hammer goes down. 28 days later, that deal completes. So you get the guarantees.
But people want to bargain when they go to an auction, don't they? Do you really end up getting what your house is truly worth at an auction?
So people buying at the auction want to bargain. People selling want the guarantee of no change, no mucking about. 28 days later, I'm going to get my money.
So you've got to weigh that up a little bit. Maybe I'll take a little less money, but I know I'm not going to be, upset a month further down the line or whatever the case may be.
Which the kind of sad truth of the matter is 30% of deals do fall through between the time of agreeing an offer and exchange because people change their minds.
So going the auction route is a way to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, where do things end up? I wouldn't be surprised if we'll end up seeing more hybrid agents where they have a high street or at least a presence on the high street. It might not be a kind of walk-in office, as well as a decent digital offering.
What sort of things should we be considering taking on board, let's say we go to the high street, for example, you say prices are coming, or fees are coming down a little bit. What should we be considering when it comes to selecting somebody on the high street to represent us in our house?
Good question. First of all, I'd say invite 3 agents round. And do your own research, look up and down your high street, check the local for sale boards and who's selling what. But you want to be confident that the agents that you're talking to are accustomed to selling your type of property in your area. So that's the first thing. You want to choose the right type of agent for your price bracket, for your area, and for the type of property. It could be a lengthy process. It could be an intricate process. It's likely to get stressful. It's emotional. There's money involved. So you want to be sure that you're dealing with somebody, or you instruct somebody that you're going to get on with through that period. You want to be sure that they're experienced, they're honest, and they're going to give you advice. I think many times people view the role of an agent, just sell it high and sell it quick. Actually, a good agent is there you're paying for their advice.
Yes, of course.
But we also have to understand that they're in business, they're a volume business, and they need transactions.
Now, with that, here's a follow-up question to that point then. I mean, we want to sell our property for as much money as we possibly can get for it. They, as you very clearly pointed out, are in a volume style of a business where they want to try and sell as many properties as possible every month, quarter, year. They've got quotas, they've got targets they need to hit, right? Should you stand your guns a little bit in regards to what you feel your home is truly worth? Or when an agent says to you, you're in la land, Phil, you're not going to get that much in this market for this house in this area this year, you need to bring it down to this number. Do you follow suit or do you stand your guns?
Well, that's why I'd say have 3 people round.
Okay.
Don't choose the agent simply who gave you the highest price. In fact, when I last sold a house, I think I had 3 agents around. I chose the price that I liked from one and the expertise and the advice that I liked from the other one. Valuation is it's not a science. It is subjective.
Mm-hmm. It's very personal at times as well. Yeah.
So I would listen to the agent because they're the ones that need to be motivated to sell it.
Of course.
And there's little point. In fact, there's probably no greater way of demotivating an agent than he tells you it's works X and you put X plus 2 and stick it on the market. He's immediately going, really? You think you know your job better than me?
Right.
That's unlikely to start things off on the right foot. But having said that, agents in this market, there is a tendency to give you an ambitious price. Yeah, don't worry. We'll definitely get you this figure. You sign up with them. You sign up with the agreement. It's for 3 months, and a month down the line, they come back. Well, I'm sorry, this doesn't kind of work.
Now, does this happen a lot?
It does. I'm afraid it does. And then you've lost a month of your absolutely key marketing.
Yes, of course.
Chances are the best buyers will walk through your door in certainly the first 3 weeks. So if you put it on an ambitious price, particularly in today's market, and then a month later it comes down, and a month later it comes down again, you've lost your best buyers. You've lost the kind of splash, the launch on the market, which is a terrible shame. But it's a difficult situation, picking the right price, picking the right agent, and preparing your house for sale.
Now, I remember, more so when I was a kid, I remember you used to see a couple of boards outside somebody's home. 2 agents trying to sell the same property. Is this still a thing nowadays? Do they even want the competition? Are they happy to have the competition almost,
There's several different ways that they structure that, but I would just say you can't have 2 for sale boards and posts. You can have 1 post and you have 2 boards, one on the back, one on the front.
Okay.
That is allowed. To have more agents involved will cost you a bigger fee. Mm-hmm. Unless it's a kind of unless the agents themselves come to an agreement, whether it's winner takes all or it's a split.
Right.
If you choose the right agent, I think in today's market you're absolutely fine to have 1.
Just 1.
And save yourself a bit, but you've got to choose the right agent, and they've got to be motivated to sell it. If you muck either of those up, you're on a hiding to nothing at the moment. So
this is critical stuff, and I kind of feel that we're just scratching at the surface here. We're going to wrap up episode number 1 right here on this. There's a cliffhanger for them.
There's lots more to come on that.
There's
topic.
a fill hanger for you. We'll be back in episode number 2 where we're going to dive even deeper onto this very, very important subject of picking the right agent to help you sell your home. We'll be back at you then.